שלום לכולם.
Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to the opening evening of the 16th International Annual Conference of the INSS. Hello to everybody who's watching us online, whether on the website or the social media or on Kan News and I-24. My name is Ben Yerushalmi. I'm the Director of Conferences of the INSS. We're so delighted and excited to see all of you on this opening evening of the annual conference in its traditional format. The first time we've been doing this since the end of COVID. These are very turbulent times, and in accordance tonight and tomorrow as well, we will discuss all the important issues. And as we open, I'd like to invite Chairman of the Board of the INSS, Sir Frank Lowy. Thank you very much. Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to open the 16th annual INSS conference. We know that the entire world is quite a complicated place today. The war in Ukraine continues. And here in Israel, we are in the midst of a great debate after the recent elections. I do hope that this argument, that this debate will not weaken Israel's security. I would like to thank Professor Trajtenberg for managing and directing this institute, and I'm very happy as well that he recruited General Tamir Hyman and Ilan Steiner. We are working and researching security topics here in the Institute. We do not focus on politics. Politics is none of our business. And I'm extremely delighted to see you all, and I wish us all a wonderful and interesting conference. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sir Frank. And now I would like to invite Professor Manuel Trajtenberg, the INSS Director. Good evening. It's so wonderful to see this hall once again lively and vibrant on this occasion. Chairman of the Board, Frank Lowy, thank you very much for your kind words. Members of the Board, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador of the U.S. to Israel, our dear friend Tom Knights, donors, friends of the Institute, researchers, viewers, and dear guests. As we've heard already, this is the 16th year in which we are holding this event, which has become a tradition and even a milestone in the public discourse and public thinking regarding the challenges of Israel's national security. But I must say that this year is not like previous years, and therefore this conference also cannot focus only on the known issues which regretfully have been with us for such a long time. Iran, the Palestinians, the Northern Front. Of course, not that the severity of these issues has diminished. On the contrary, it rather increased. But this time, for the first time in 75 years, the internal domestic Israeli strife, which is rifting the society apart, is also turning right in front of our eyes into an extremely dangerous threat on Israel's security, because it is not only the freedom of the judiciary or the robustness of democracy which are at stake here. It is also our ability as a society to uphold a shared ethos to converge around a common vision that will make it possible to deal with outside threats and simultaneously promote a prosperous and just and free society here in Israel. This is what's at stake here. Without social cohesion, without a profound identification with the collective, without a Northern Star in common values, without broad consent regarding the rules of the game, without all these, I highly doubt whether the Israeli society will continue to be willing to shoulder the burden and to mobilize itself in order to maintain this glorious Zionist enterprise. That its meaning, there is no agreement even regarding its meaning. There are three features of dramatic legislation which is currently being promoted, which some people consider it as a necessary legal reform, while others treat it as a dangerous revolution that is threatening the regime. But there are three features that no one can dispute. The first one is that this legislation is a significant change in the rules of the game regarding the nature of the regime in Israel. Number two, that this legislation is promoted at extreme speed, much more urgently than minor bills, and I know this from my own personal experience regarding the promotion of legislation in the Knesset, and all this is being done without any attempt for genuine listening and attention, without any attempt to reach some kind of broad agreement and consensus. And number three, the legislation process is rifting the Israeli society. It's tearing it apart, and it increases the anger and hostility between the groups and polarizes people's positions. And I must say that I'm not even talking about the content. I am not talking about the substance, the what. We can argue about that, and this can be a reason for a serious discussion, but I'm talking about the how. And as a concerned citizen, I must ask, is this the way to go about this? Is this the way to promote such dramatic changes, even if some of them are indeed necessary? The success, this kind of success, won't it turn into a Pyrrhus victory? And things can be done differently. Just a few weeks ago, we expressed our support to the President's outline because we were very fearful regarding the implications that this crisis might have on Israel's security. The President's outline was and still is a sincere attempt to create a space for a respectful, constructive discussion and not merely cosmetic talk. And for that purpose, first and foremost, we should have stopped this legislation train that is rushing towards the abyss of dissent and hostility among us. Regretfully, the President's call wasn't answered. Ladies and gentlemen, there aren't evil people who are completely evil or completely righteous here, beyond the sectorial agendas and interests and personal agendas and interests that regretfully are very much present and perhaps are even fueling the reform or regime revolution. Beyond all these, there are certainly true feelings and arguments that must be addressed seriously to try and give them proper response, but not in such a way. Ladies and gentlemen, about a month ago, we submitted the Institute's National Strategic Assessment to the President of the State of Israel, Yitzhak Bougie Herzog. And in that assessment, we focused on some of the main challenges, which are true challenges for Israel's national security. First of all, extensive geopolitical shocks, which are reshaping the global arena. First and foremost, the growing dispute between the U.S. and China, and of course the war in the Ukraine. which are narrowing Israel's leeway and place where it can maneuver, and that forces us to choose sides, and that's not a good thing for our national security. Number two, the fact that Iran is in practice already a nuclear threshold country that might, as such a country, pose an existential, genuine threat over Israel for the first time since the 73 war. Number four, quick escalation in Judea and Samaria, as the Palestinian Authority is weakening, as the end of Abu Mazen's era is approaching without any diplomatic political horizon, while simultaneously the settlement endeavor is ever expanding, and that will ultimately create a situation of one state. All these have led to a severe wave of terror attacks and are increasing the potential for the eruption of an extensive violent clash, and ultimately the internal crisis following the advancement of the revolution, the regime revolution, which is also posing a genuine threat on Israel's security. I would like to focus on one of the dangerous ramifications of this internal dispute that not a lot of people mention, and that is the way the regime is diverting attention from, or shifting attention from, outside enemies into domestic enemies. Does anybody think that you can reach educated decisions on fateful issues such as the required preparation as we face this new axis of Russia and Iran, or the IDF's multi-annual plan, when senior office holders are concentrating on their argument regarding the override clause, or to try and promote the dairy bill? No, of course not. It's impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent days we've experienced some severe terror attacks, the murder of the two brothers at Hawara, and the young Jew, an American Jew who made Aliyah, who immigrated to Israel. We bow down our heads along with the entire people of Israel, and of course we pay our condolences to the families. A short while after the terror attack in Hawara, we were appalled to see the terrible rioting of the settlers, burning down homes, some of them still with the residents inside, and who somehow managed to escape. Our loss of control over one of the most serious events perpetrated by Jewish Israelis here in this country, all that while at the same time senior officials of the coalition are adding fuel to the fire. Isn't this a serious damage to Israel's security? "20 years ago, we were forced to deal with, or contend with, the second intifada, with the heavy human toll it took, and simultaneously the explosion of the dot-com bubble. And this combination of a massive security clash along with a serious economic crisis, among other things, led for the first time to a negative economic growth, the shrinking of our GDP with everything this implies. This was an illustration, a demonstration to the fact that the greatest threats, the greatest risks are when we have multiple fronts that are simultaneous. This time it's not just two fronts like we faced back then, but this time it's a much greater set of threats and challenges, and above all those, we have our own domestic crisis hovering above it, and it gnaws away, chips away at our ability to deal with it. One cannot embellish or try to hide reality. We are facing the most serious challenge to Israel's national security since October 6, 1973. I highly doubt it whether we can successfully address the situation in Judea and Samaria and the nuclear Iran and the ever-growing rifts in our relations with the U.S. as long as this train of the regime change, the regime revolution is pushing the Israeli society towards the abyss and the sectorialism, as long as sectorialism overrides a sense of national unity. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished audience, we must consider this crisis as a wake-up call, and we must realize that we can no longer postpone the fateful decisions that we have had to deal with for a long time, because the absence of such a decision is what increases the internal rift. Who are we? What is the meaning of a Jewish and democratic state? What's more important, the unity of the people or the unity of the land? What are the rights and duties of every Israeli citizen, including the duty to serve? We must have a serious, frank discussion on all these issues as we strive in an uncompromising manner to reach compromises, broad, extensive compromises, and this is the only way in which we can overcome this crisis and rehabilitate what we have in common and address successfully our challenges from within and from without. It is our duty to do so. We have no other choice because we have no other country. Thank you very much.